right, let's start this up. All right. Mike L., good to see you. Thanks for coming on in. Remember, a great way to support what we do in this show is we have the Super Chat that is open. You can also give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, or a thumbs down if you want. Hit the bell button, lets you know when we're about to start things off. And, of course, do a little shopping at the SOR Vault here on Spaced Out Radio. We're 5 seconds away from kicking off this week. Let's have a good one, everybody. Malcolm, sit back, sit tight. Be with you in a second. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. If something strange is happening in Scotland or around the United Kingdom, you can bet our guest tonight, Malcolm Robinson, has his fingers and pulse on it. Known as one of the premier researchers in the Commonwealth when it comes to all things paranormal and supernatural, Malcolm is one who isn't afraid to take his adventures to new depths, like searching for the Loch Ness Monster in a submarine. Who does that? Malcolm does. A man who loves a good chase, loves a good ghost story. Malcolm is very diversified in his research from ghosts to UFOs. He's written books about the subjects, which can be found online, including one of the 1979 UFO close encounter with forestry worker Robert Taylor. We're going to learn all about that tonight as well. Mr. Malcolm Robinson, it's a very big pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. Good morning to you from the UK, all the way here on the west coast of Canada.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I'd just like to thank you and all your lovely listeners for having me on. We're going to have a wonderful time tonight, for sure.
So I'm going to just hit you up right off the bat. You know, everything that you're covering, what kind of weirdo are you looking at all these subjects?
Pretty big weirdo, I guess, you know. I mean, I started out to disprove these subjects. As a young boy, I always had this deep-held fascination for all things weird and wonderful. And I read the books of Charles Fort, Eric von Daniken, watched the TV shows like The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, and movies like The Forbidden Planet, The Day the Earth Stood Still. But as a youngster, my parents took us to the ghost train, you know, at these fairgrounds. And I was absolutely fascinated by these dark chambers and all these things falling about your face. And as I grew older, I just had this fascination for these weird things. That said, Dave, I still honestly believed at that time that there were no validity to claims pertaining to ghosts, poltergeists, UFOs. I truly thought that these things were just, you know, they were just made up. There was no sense to them. How wrong was I? As my life progressed, as I did the research here in the UK and overseas, it soon became apparent that there is no smoke without fire. And some of the stories you're going to hear and your listeners are going to hear tonight is a lot of my research. It took me, that made me jump off that proverbial skeptical fence. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey.
I can just imagine, you know, and you're obviously someone who has a real passion and desire to find out the truth. With these subjects, it doesn't matter whether it's ghosts or UFOs or cryptids like the Loch Ness Monster. In your time that from when you started researching to where you are now, do you feel you're any closer to answers, or do you feel that the mystery is right there but still so far away?
Yeah, it's probably right there and so far away. I mean, I get asked the question, if UFOs are real, then why don't they make themselves known outside the White House lawn, etc.? There is clearly an agenda going on. What I can safely say, and this is only my own personal opinion, Dave, is that I am absolutely convinced of life after death. And this is due to the fact of my own research, speaking to clinical physicians, doctors, nurses, and near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. The evidence is overwhelming. Now, having said that, we have to be very, very careful because, yes, there is another side to that. It could be oxygen starvation to the brain, people hallucinating, and I'm well aware of all the other attributes that people say that could account for near-death experiences. But, I mean, the evidence worldwide is absolutely astonishing, and some of the tales and people I've spoke to has convinced me sincerely that there is another life for each and every one of us, that we will see our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters. But like I say, people have to reach their own conclusions on that. It's okay reading books and stuff like that, but when you do the research and you find out these wonderful people with wonderful stories, I do believe in that. As far as the UFO situation goes, there's, again, no denying that we're dealing with a bona fide, real subject here, a global phenomena of immense proportions. But we have to bear in mind that 95% of all UFO reports can easily be explained away. We're only speaking about a small 5%. Now, out of that 5%, 3% could be our own black budget technology. The stealth aircraft, for instance, was flying in America for a good 6, 7, 8 years before the American Air Force said, that's ours. And that gave rise to many false UFO reports. The other 2% of that 5, well, 1% of that could be a rare atmospheric phenomena, something akin to ball lightning. And the 1%, the fly in the ointment, if you like, is this bona fide true UFO phenomena of objects doing incredible manoeuvres in the sky. And of course, that then goes on to UFO abductions. I have a couple of Scottish UFO abduction stories to tell your good self and your lovely listeners later on this evening. And all these stories combined have shown to me that, yes, we are dealing with a UFO phenomena. Of course, there's other researchers in Canada and America and Great Britain would say, rubbish, there's no such thing. It's a combination of, as I said, our own technology, misinterpretation, etc. And we have to bear that in mind. People say to me, Dave, that I'm an expert. I'll go on radio and TV. I'm not an expert. I know next to nothing about these subjects. I've been involved for over 40 years of my life, and I don't class myself as an expert, just someone who is deeply fascinated by these wonderful subjects. And sometimes I wonder why, more people in the world don't look skywards and look inwards at these wonderful subjects, but each to their own, I guess.
Malcolm, have you ever had an experience on your own that led you down this, or was it just the thrill of the chase?
Well, it started off as a thrill of the chase for sure, and then as we progressed, I've had my own UFO experiences, my own ghostly experiences, so many, and I'm quite happy to tell you quite a few just now. I remember we were dealing with a haunted house in the town of Stirling in central Scotland. And this lady had terrible problems with poltergeist manifestations, things falling off the wall. She was being pushed downstairs, etc. And we were working in this one particular bedroom. And we always work in darkness. We bring along a very, very gifted psychic who will, tune in, so to speak, into the spirit world and try and find out what is going on here. And the psychic said to me, Malcolm, don't you feel spirit in the room tonight? And I said, no. Oh, Malcolm, come on now, it's everywhere. She says, okay, stand over in the corner of the room, put your arm out and ask spirit to touch you. I says, pardon? She says, yeah, just do that. So there I was, Dave, you're standing in the other side of the room. Nobody was near me. Absolutely nobody was near me. I had my arm out in front of me and I said, okay, if there's anybody from spirit side, please kindly touch the back of my hand. 1 minute went by, nothing. 2 minutes went by, nothing. And I thought, this is crazy. Then on the third minute, bang, a tremendous force was pushed on the back of my hand and my whole arm just fell and whacked against my thigh. And boy, did I get a fright. And sometimes I say to my audiences and that, probably the best piece of kit that a Ghostbuster should have is bicycle clips. Now think about it.
One of the things that a lot of people who investigate the paranormal, that's all they want to cover. They don't want to get into monsters. They don't want to get into UFOs and aliens. Yet you tend to look into all facets of the supernatural. Have you, like many investigators, figured out that there is, or there seems to be, a correlation between all of these phenomena together?
Well, it's a good question, that, Dave, because we dealt with a case in the town of Devon in England where not only were UFOs being sighted above the participant's house, the witness's house, but they also had ghosts. Victorian young girls appeared in the room. And on one and it sounds totally bizarre, it really does, but on one occasion, the lady woke up and she saw one side of the bedroom was a small grey creature, which we know that are associated with these low-level, close proximity UFO sightings. So one of these little grey beings was to the left-hand side of the bedroom, and on the right was this young, wispy girl. So there is a correlation of sorts there. It's the only case ever in 40 years where I've had two types of phenomena in the same area. That was quite puzzling, that one, yes.
Okay, so if you do believe that there is some invisible thread that connects it all together, I got to ask you in regards to that, what do you think is controlling this all? Where do you think it's going?
Well, it's another interesting question. When we look at the ghost side of things, first and foremost, like I say, I do believe in life after death, and there's quite a number of variations of ghosts, and they're not all transparent. You get solid-looking ghosts. You get anniversary ghosts that will appear on say, for instance, the 21st of July every year, etc. There is, to my belief, that, and when we talk about poltergeists, some people say that it's a sexual energy coming from children. It somehow pushes chairs over, etc. I do not concur with that theory at all. Because if that was the case, then you would have poltergeists in every house in Canada pushing stuff off with troubled teenagers. So I don't think it's that. For me personally, I think it's people who have passed on to the other side. It could be in quick circumstances and don't realise that they've passed on. So they tend to hang around the earth plane, and the only way they can make themselves known is to maybe try and move objects or make their presence known in the family home. My society, Strange Phenomena Investigations, which was founded in 1979 to investigate these claims, what we do when it comes to a haunted house is we will find out as much as possible about what's going on. We'll look at the lay of the land, what was on that area prior to those houses being built. And we take in a very gifted psychic and we ask the family if we can, more or less be in their house the whole night with them moving out to maybe a friend's, and they're quite happy to do that. So we take full control of the house. We have investigators in different rooms of the house. We have all the equipment going, and our psychic walks about the house and tries to tune in. It's like one of those old radio sets, not the DAB radios, the DAB, where you could tune in from Radio 1 to Radio 2. It's a tuning in of the frequencies. Our psychic is making that contact with the spirit world and trying to find out Who is it? Who is behind these circumstances? And generally speaking, around about 6 a.m. in the morning, once we've ascertained as much as we possibly can. Now, this bit may sound a wee bit Hollywood, Dave, but around about 6 a.m. in the morning, we try to impress upon that earthbound spirit and say, look, you have moved on. You're no longer here. You're upsetting the new tenants of this property. There is another place for you to go to. It does sound a bit Hollywood, but go to the light. Go forward. There will be people there to meet you and greet you. And 9 times out of 10, that generally works. I remember when I was growing up in Scotland, Dave, my father said to me, son, I see you're getting really interested in all this. Right, okay, I'm going to tell you a story about your granny, my mother. I went, yeah, okay. So, yeah, what happened? Well, as you know, son, your granny passed away a couple of years ago. I says, yeah. He says, well, this is something that I've never told anybody. He says, just a few days after his mother, my dad's mother, passed his spirit, he was lying in his bed, Dave. He wasn't sleeping. He impressed upon me that he definitely wasn't sleeping. The lights were off. And then suddenly, in the darkness, this beautiful warm glow, this light blue glow appeared, and he heard his name, Robert, look at me. And my dad, my father, knew that was his mother, but she's dead. She passed 2 days prior. Look at me, Robert. And he had the courage to peer over the bed covers, and he saw in this beautiful warm ambient light his mother standing there. And she said, son, I've passed on, and I just want to say that I am going to a better place. Now, the story then goes that she visited my father's brothers that same night, my uncles, and said the same things. And, you know, when you hear stories like this, it's quite warm, it's quite wonderful. And every time I give a lecture here in the UK or in Europe, after the lecture, people come to me and say, Mr. Robinson, I've got to tell you what happened to me. I haven't even told my own husband, but I'm going to tell you. And you hear all these wonderful stories. But what we have to bear in mind, David, is that, yeah, of course, they're wonderful stories. Does that mean there any truth to them? We're taking people at face value. And again, when we look at the photography world, you know, photographs of UFOs, photographs of ghosts, these can be manipulated on computer. We're living in the Steven Spielberg age of DreamWorks laboratory, where anything can be manipulated onto computer to look fanciful, to look wonderful. Thankfully, that same technology can be applied to that photograph, and we may see a very, very slim, slender wire holding a model of a UFO from a tree. So the technology works both ways, which is great. And I just hope that more and more scientists across the world try to show an interest in these wonderful subjects. But the sad thing is, some of them don't, purely for fear of their peers. You know, you're what? You're getting involved in UFOs? Are you crazy? But we laughed at John Logie Baird, the inventor of television, saying, oh, that thing will never work. Oh, sorry, it's worked. We laughed at the Wright brothers' very first flight. Oh, that'll never fly. Oh, it has flown. So what I'm trying to say is we should never, ever laugh at things just because they sound and look ridiculous, because we'll end up with egg on our face for sure. And this is why the paranormal for me is so absolutely entertaining and wonderful. I get a lot of kicks of spending a night in a haunted house, and you know, a lot of nights things don't happen, but when it does, oh my goodness. And what we're trying to do as a research society, Dave, is impress upon the people of the world to say, look, have a look at this evidence, have a look at what we've got here, and make your own mind up. And it's very difficult. It's like, you know, when you go to university, you don't go into a university just to look at the ceiling. You're there to learn. And learning about these subjects is fascinating. You know, I've had people say to me that, Malcolm, you're crazy. There's no such things as UFOs. And I'll say, thank you. You're entitled to your opinion, but can I ask you, how did you reach your opinion that UFOs are a load of rubbish? Have you extensively studied the subject? Have you traversed the country speaking to witnesses? No, I haven't. Thank you. And so what I'm trying to say is some people just don't believe, just maybe it could be a fear factor, you know. I mean, I've had people report UFO sightings to me, and when I receive these reports and interview the people, it makes me wonder, Dave, how many people above them or around them have seen the same object but don't want to come forward for fear of ridicule. As a research society, what we do, we obviously, first and foremost, with any given UFO sighting, will notify the police to see if perhaps any members of the public have, called their station to report this object. We'll speak with the airports, the local, the national airports, provincial airports. We'll talk to the Ministry of Defence in London to find out if there were any air activity, air exercises ongoing in that patch of sky at that given time. So effectively, we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's to try and find a rational explanation for any given sighting. That's part and parcel of what we do and what other researchers do. And sometimes we're left with some amazing sightings. It's fantastic.
We have about 2.5 minutes here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour. Malcolm Robinson is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Malcolm, in regards to the way you investigate, why do you seem to take it so personal? You have this passion. What is your personal attachment to all of this?
I think my personal attachment is to try and impress, as I said, the people of the United Kingdom and the rest of the world to just purely have a look, because the evidence is there. We've got to look at this evidence. It's a passion of mine, it's a desire of mine to impress upon the people. I don't hold all the answers. I'm certainly not an expert, but all I can safely say, over 40 years of research, on foot patrol, so to speak, is the evidence is there. You got to look at it. And it's just a wonderful journey for me, David, yeah.
Okay, so the fact that you're on this journey of literally investigating items, creatures, paranormal activity that to this date has not been proven. It's been experienced, but it has not been scientifically proven. Do you ever look back on this and think, I've lost a lot of friends, I've lost a lot of cohorts, companions over my lust for investigating these topics? At any point, have you ever just thought, maybe that's enough? We got a minute.
No, it's not enough. I mean, quite the reverse. I've had many people come to me with stories I may have missed in newspapers, or Malcolm, have you heard that on the radio? So they're coming to me with all these stories, and that's the beauty of it. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing catalogue of trying to obtain as many case histories as we possibly can. And some of the case histories that I'm really excited to tell yourself, Dave, and your lovely listeners later this evening, I do hope that they will extend the knowledge and the importance to the people listening to this show to say, look, these things are happening. It's correct that the people of Canada and America hear about these stories from the United Kingdom, because it extensifies the whole shooting match of this wonderful subject.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to get right into it, my friend. I want to get into the Loch Ness Monster, because you were one of the very few people who's actually taken a submarine into the loch to try and find Nessie. And we're going to start right off the bat with Loch Ness Monster Talk with author, researcher, and all-round good guy, Malcolm Robinson, on Spaced Out Radio next. All right, we're clear. That's good stuff right off the bat, Malcolm. Good, solid radio.
I've got lots more of ghost stuff to talk to you, David. I've got so much more stories of ghosts. So let's, obviously, back and forward, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, some really juicy Scottish UFO sightings as well.
Well, the two stories that I definitely want to get to tonight are about Nessie and Robert Taylor.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if we've got time, I'd love to tell you about Scotland's biggest UFO abduction case as well.
Just writing it down.
And, of course, my own sightings as well,
Of course. We'll get into it. We got lots of time here. It's going to go fast, but we got lots of time.
Yeah. I hope your audience can understand the Scottish dialect.
Oh, they're doing all right. The big question everybody wants to know is if you're naked under your kilt.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave. Believe it or not, I've only worn a kilt 3 times in my life at big weddings, and yes, I didn't wear anything under a kilt on those occasions.
Beautiful. All right, we got a couple of questions here that we ask every guest. All right, that's new to this show because, my audience, they're a bunch of weirdos. They are. They're good weirdos, but they're strange. All right, so a lot of them have a fetish for eating breakfast foods for dinner. Like scones and bacon and eggs, even though bacon is a universal food. Pancakes, waffles, hash browns. What's your opinion on eating breakfast foods for dinner?
Well, it's each to their own. I mean, certainly you can have anything you want. So, I mean, fair play. If you love it, you enjoy it, yeah, have it any time of the day. Go for it.
And do you?
No, I'm not a big eater. I mean, I have, porridge in the morning and a light lunch and then a big evening tea.
Okay, so would you eat porridge for dinner, or is that just a breakfast food?
Yeah, I mean, you can have porridge for dinner, but it's primarily a breakfast food for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to put you on down the middle here of that you don't like eating breakfast foods for dinner. So that wins for me. The rest of you in the chat room, you lost that one. All right, the next question is, do you remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, the big Devil's Tower where they land the UFO, that big formation there. Do you
in Wyoming? Yes.
Yeah. Now, are you on Team Stump, like it's an old tree stump, or are you on Team Rock, like it's a rock formation?
It's clearly a rock formation, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Son of a bitch. Corrins, where the hell did you find this guy? Okay, trying to break down Team Stump and Team Rock. Oh my gosh. You're going to cause me all sorts of problems here. All sorts of problems now. I'm teasing, of course, but whatever.
Are we back on shortly?
No, we got about just over 90 seconds.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd love to lecture in Canada one of these days. I'm the first Scotsman to lecture in America, but I'd love to do Canada as well.
We'd like to do a lot of things in Canada. Hold on. One more. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see here. Where are we here? We got about 1 minute. 1 minute.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could start by saying how I got involved and interested in Nessie and work up from there, talk about the UFO sightings over Loch Ness, a trip in the submarine, and the time when Steven Spielberg wanted to help me find Nessie. So there's quite a few bits and pieces that we can talk about in the Nessie story, yeah?
We are running with it. The next segment is completely dedicated to Nessie.
And, of course, there's research at Loch Morar, which is another Scottish loch, which allegedly has another monster as well called Morag, Nessie's cousin.
Oh, son of a gun. How many monsters you got over there?
Quite a few.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we're just 20 seconds away. A good way to support what we do on this show is by asking you, give us a thumbs up or down, whatever you feel we deserve. Also, the Super Chat is open. And a great way to support what we do on this show is by shopping at the SOR Vault on our website. So check it on out. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. Want to remind you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking with author, researcher Malcolm Robinson, all the way over in Scotland. And we are going to get right into it with Loch Ness Monster talk right now. Malcolm, you know, for centuries there have been reports of an alleged plesiosaur swimming around the famous loch. There's been alleged photos of it, videos of it. Some people believe it's an eel, some believe it's a sturgeon, while there's a great number of people who believe they saw what they saw, and they saw a dinosaur of some sort still living there. You know, when did you first start getting into the whole Loch Ness Monster phenomena?
Well, I think for me personally, it started probably around the age of 11 or 12. My mother and father took us trips up to Loch Ness in the car, and we spent many happy hours around the loch. And to see it, to actually see this 23-mile loch, expanse of water, it's been said that you can get the population of the world 3 times over in Loch Ness. Now, whoever made up that stat is fantastic. I don't know about that. But around about 11 or 12, and this place captivated me. I just fell in love with Loch Ness, and I knew as I grew older I would have to come back and do some research. And probably when I was in my teens, 18, 19, I went back with my team, Strange Phenomenon Investigations. We interviewed a number of people around the shores of Loch Ness. And I'll give you a quick for instance. One of the gentlemen we interviewed was Father Gregory Brucey. Now, this was a man of the cloth, Dave. There's a Benedictine abbey at Fort Augustus, which is at one of the ends of Loch Ness. Now, that's no longer there, sadly, but he told me that he had a gentleman from Westminster Cathedral in London come up, an organist on holiday, and he took him down to the jetty at the edge of the loch, and the loch was like a sheet of glass, not a ripple, beautiful flat loch. And he said to his colleague, well, there you go, there's the famous Loch Ness. And as if on script, this tremendous long neck with a small, like a sheep-like head, thrust up from beneath the bowels of the water and started moving around, thrashing about, and then it just fell back into the loch, cascading in foam. So Father Gregory turned round to his colleague at Westminster Cathedral and he says, you've been up here for what? Less than 2 minutes and you've seen the fabled Nessie? Now, Father Gregory, back in 1971, also himself saw the Loch Ness Monster, and it was very similar to that sighting there. Again, it was a long, slender neck with a small sheep-like head cascading back into the loch. We also interviewed a retired former water bailiff of Loch Ness, Mr. Alex Campbell, sadly no longer with us, and he was a man who pushed Loch Ness into the world domain because his sighting back in 1934, as I say, was a catalyst for future Nessie sightings. And what he saw, Dave, is he saw a long neck, a small sheep-like head, and 3 humps traversing the loch only for seconds, and then it dived back down into the depths of Loch Ness. So when I was interviewing the likes of Alex Campbell, Father Gregory, and other people around the loch, it was clear to me that there is something seriously going on in Loch Ness. What we have to bear in mind is that Loch Ness has its own moods. If you're further up the hills looking down, you can see all these dark-coloured patches of water. People claim to see a lot of humps in Loch Ness. It's not Nessie. It's standing waves. And what I mean by that is you have one boat going south along the loch, one boat going north. And as the bow progresses through the water, it pushes the water, and the water makes these humps. We call it a standing wave. And if you're coming to Loch Ness for the first time and you're viewing that, you would automatically think, once the boats have moved out of the area, that you're looking at this humped monster. It's not the case. And I think for me, probably the best evidence that we have for something in Loch Ness is sonar. And back in 1987, we had Operation Deep Scan. Now, what that was, Dave, we had a flotilla of about 12 boats which traversed up and down Loch Ness on a daily basis with the best sophisticated sonar of that time. Now, they managed to capture at least 6 anomalous returns on their sonar, which was in excess of 30 feet. Now, these blips on the sonar were not a grouped shoal of fish. This was long elongated, and when the boat turned round to go back and try and find this anomalous return, they couldn't find it, which was a great shame. For me, it's not a plesiosaur, absolutely not, because a plesiosaur, that long neck, people may say, well, that's what a plesiosaur had, but it's not an air-breathing animal. Whatever's in Loch Ness, it's an accidental breaking of the water's surface as this creature is feeding on the fish, maybe 20 feet below the surface. It's coming up and to feed off these fish, and it's accidentally breaking the water's surface. And so that's based. I mean, people have said perhaps it could be one of these large sturgeon fish. Again, a possibility. A sturgeon fish, as we know, can grow up anything between 10 foot to about 17 foot, an enormous size for a fish, and it's a scaly back as well. And some people have said when they've viewed Nessie that it has this scaly back as well. So it's clearly an enigma. Scotland as a nation has always had tales. We call them water kelpies, this water horse. We've had it through centuries. And it's not just Loch Ness, we have a monster in it. We have monsters in a loch called Loch Morar, which is on the west coast of Scotland. And that loch is only 11 miles long. It's the third deepest loch in Europe, and it's clear water as well. And there have been numerous sightings of something in Loch Morar as well. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place to visit. And I've been fortunate to, as I say, speak to people who have seen Nessie. I've spoken to scientists, and it's a fascinating subject.
So what do you believe is there? Do you believe that there is some sort of monster under there that has been breeding for centuries? Do you believe the legends? How close have you been to a sighting?
Well, I certainly believe the legends, but again, we have to be very careful of, as I say, the moods of the loch, and the wind whips up the water, etc. I think it's probably a large eel. It's in some kind of mutated eel, because there's no denying, let's be honest, there's no denying there's something in excess of 30 foot there. And it's obviously more than one. You wouldn't have just a one eel in Loch Ness. Back in the 90s, I had this idea to capture Nessie. And what it consisted of, Dave, if you can imagine in your mind's eye a boxing ring, right? You've got the ropes, the square ring, only on a much, much larger scale. Now, that would be secreted on the floor of Loch Ness near Castle Urquhart. And on these ropes would be these spherical balls with radio biopsy darts. Now, inside this large boxing ring effect would be a machine which is constantly turning out a kind of fish puree, if you like, an attractant to any creature that was in the loch. And on the surface of Loch Ness would be these lights, which would be, on this boxing ring trap. And if any large creature pushed against the ropes, that would release these spherical balls, these radio biopsy darts, and insert into the creature's body. And that would alert surface divers to knowing that the ropes have been breached, the radio biopsy darts has then been released, and it would be a tranquilizing dart as well. So it wouldn't kill the creature, it would just kind of neutralize it to allow surface divers to come down and try and retrieve this creature. So this made big press in Scotland at the time, and I had a phone call from a Scottish journalist, and he says, "Malcolm, we've put your theory to Steven Spielberg, and he is absolutely fascinated by your plan to capture the Loch Ness Monster, and he's prepared to put up quite a lot of dollars, quite a lot of money, to help you build this apparatus, build this trap, and try and once and for all prove what's in Loch Ness." So it really was big news back in the 90s. And sadly, like all things in life, it didn't transpire because Steven Spielberg went on to create other movies and it kind of fell flat. But I still believe, Dave, to this day, that this plan, if exercised and put into practice, could probably once and for all prove that we have a creature in Loch Ness, be it an eel, be it something else. But I think it's a viable thing to try, for sure.
You went down in a submarine, which very few people have done that in the loch. What was that experience like? And, explain the entire environment under there.
Yes, again, I was very fortunate to go down in a submarine in Loch Ness back in 1994. It was around about 20-foot submarine in size. It was sponsored by Swatch watches. It was a red and white submarine, not yellow, red and white. The front nose of the submarine had a very, very toughened glass porthole, if you like. And that was illuminated outside with about 5 or 6 very, very strong halogen lights to penetrate the inky blackness of Loch Ness. Also, the submarine also had a viewing portal on the floor of the submarine. And we went through the safety exercises with the skipper of the Loch Ness submarine. And after he had informed everybody on the submarine about what to expect, we slowly moved out from our base at Drumnadrochit, which is on the shores of Loch Ness, and slowly traversed into the Loch Ness and then just descended. Now, it's quite true. People say that you can't see anything in Loch Ness because it's heavily peat-stained with the peat-stained particles coming down from the little streams on the hills at Loch Ness. That's true to a degree because once you go down past 20 feet, that inky blackness suddenly is clear. And we went down to a depth of around about 600-700 foot. And we went to the floor of Loch Ness, and it's a sandy silt floor with white rocks jutting out of it. And in point of fact, you'll find this video that I took. I shot a video inside the submarine and through this portal, looking down into the sandy silt floor. It's on YouTube somewhere. And it was just a great experience. Now, it's a very, very confined submarine. If you were claustrophobic, my God, you wouldn't like this at all, And suddenly, as we were traversing slowly along the loch floor, there were hardly any signs of water vegetation or anything like that. Bang! It just fell away. It was a massive, big chasm. And I said to the skipper of the submarine, "Can we go down there? We got to go down there, surely." He says, No, we've got to stick to an allotted course. Because the nature of the submarine being there in the first place, Dave, was to extract core samples of the loch floor to try and get some more information about the ecology of the loch, etc., or over the millennium, or the sediments, etc. And it was just a wonderful experience. Now, I'm sure your listeners are waiting for me to say, did I see Nessie? Unfortunately, no. Now, people may say, well, why not? Maybe it's because there's nothing in there. But you got to remember, when we were traversing the loch floor with these very bright halogen lights illuminating the loch floor, we never saw any evidence of any fish as well. It might be the case that maybe fish were kind of frightened to move into this light, thinking, wow, what's going on here? You know, this big light source. And that may apply to any large creature who just didn't want to get into the light source. The skipper of the submarine also said, Malcolm, by golly, we've had some strange sonar reports on our apparatus here. And we're trained operators. They're not grouped shoal of fish. These are again in excess of 20, 30 feet, anomalous blips coming up on our sonar. So again, it's a wonderful story. It's nice testimony, but does it provide clear-cut proof of something in Loch Ness? Other than sonar, yes, it does to me. But sonar, photographs, oh my goodness, there's so many photographs of, allegedly, of Nessie. The famous one, of course, 1934, the long neck was a hoax, as we know. That was a created hoax by a gentleman. That came out after many years later. Someone on their deathbed claimed that, yes, he made this little toy submarine with a plasticine neck and filmed it from a distance, and it went all over the world. It's an iconic photograph. Again, this is why we have to be careful when we look at photographs of Nessie, because they can be so easily manipulated, so easily, manufactured, so to speak. But yes, I do believe there's something there. It probably is some large mutated eel. And when I wrote a book regarding Nessie, I put through all the sightings. I went through all the other Scottish lochs and lakes where other creatures have been seen. We speak about Scandinavia and the creatures in there. We look at all the theories it could be. There's so many theories. I mean, some people have said that maybe because the Caledonian forest, which stretched across Scotland back in prehistoric times, eventually these trees fell into the loch. And as they descended into the loch, eventually over years, the gas bubbles released these logs, and they, pushed up into the surface of Loch Ness. People have said, well, maybe that's, if you're looking at that from a distance, you might think that's a creature on the surface, but it's not. It's just a wonderful subject, yeah.
Do you believe then that these big creatures, like the man of the cloth who you were talking about earlier, said he had seen a sighting and brought a friend down there where the creature jumped out of the water very quickly? What do you make of those sightings then? Because I'll tell you, I used to live along the famed Fraser River in British Columbia here, and we would see sturgeon jump, but they looked nothing like a dinosaur.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't think a sturgeonfish would be attributable to what's been seen at Loch Ness and Loch Morar. It's a different category of something. It makes me wonder, though, because, you've got Ogopogo, the monster. You've got monsters in Russian lakes as well. There's clearly something going on. Loch Ness itself was open to the sea about 7 million years ago, I think it was. Now, but you've got to remember that Loch Ness is a freshwater lake, freshwater loch. And people have said to me, well, don't you think, and over the years, at the Inverness end, the land has risen and it cut off Loch Ness. So maybe initially it was a saltwater lake, then it somehow traversed into this freshwater. But people have said to me, well, surely, is it possible that something's coming in from the sea, these underground channels? But there was a side scan sonar conducted by Dr. Robert Rhines back in the 70s, which clearly showed that there is no tunnels, no caverns on the steep V-shaped sides of Loch Ness going out to the sea. So I don't think there's any tunnels or anything like that as well.
That's very interesting. So it is locked in, and with it being fresh water, how are there eels big enough that could be 10, 12, 15, 18 feet living in the loch?
Well, none has been captured. None has been captured so far, but clearly what's been seen in the loch certainly resembles that. We also have to bear in mind that seals have been seen in the loch. They've came through the Caledonia Canal, and somehow they've entered the loch, and you just see the small head with the whiskers coming up. And if you weren't aware that that's a seal, you would misconstrue that as a fabled Nessie as well. But there have been so many expeditions conducted at Loch Ness over the years, telescopic cameras, sonar, etc. So many crazy things, people pulling a carcass of a cow but on a boat just to see if we can attract something. But there's no denying there's something there for sure. And it's for anybody who hasn't been to Loch Ness, I would clearly say you must go. It's got this aura all about it, And again, admittedly, we have all these little shops on the shores of Loch Ness selling model Nessies, this, that, and the other. And people have said, that's the Scottish people just capitalising on Loch Ness with all the little curios and stuff. But you got to remember, it's the same in Elvis Presley Boulevards in Memphis, Tennessee. You've got all these wee wobbling wobbling Elvises, etc. So it's quite right that people try to make money and capitalise on the success of what Nessie has brought to Scotland as a whole, because it's one of the biggest tourist attractions in Scotland out with Edinburgh.
Oh, very much. And there's literally millions upon millions of tourism dollars to, suggest that this creature is real.
Yeah, for sure. But again, the bottom line is we have to have some definitive proof, because at the end of the day, we have to have some definitive proof that something unusual is in Loch Ness. And we've got to remember, this has been going on for centuries, Dave. It's not just a 100, 200-year phenomena. It's been going on for centuries, and still nobody has come up with any satisfactory explanation as to account for what's going on. Yes, there's lots of photographs. Some are, don't show very, very much at all, just a small dark spot on the loch. But we live in hope. We can only hope that as we progress, that something tangible will come up. And maybe if somebody has the money to do this trap, that I've devised, maybe that might be a way forward.
We've got about 90 seconds left before we got to go to break at the top of the hour here. Malcolm Robinson is our guest tonight. Malcolm, in your estimation, we're just talking legend here then of the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. Yep.
So with that, do you consider yourself a little bit of a heartbreaker with a minute to go here?
No, I mean, people always want to find monsters, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, etc. People want monsters in their life. My job is to find the truth, and if Nessie turns out to be nothing more than an eel or a very large fish, then I'll be the first person, to put my hand up and say, this is what it is. And the same with any UFOs, etc. If we uncover any faked UFOs, we will certainly show that to the public, because my job is to get to the truth and also unmask the fraudulent people out there who are just trying to create a hoax to get money or get in the newspapers or get on the television. It's one of these sad situations. Thankfully, in over 40 years, I've never, touch wood, had anybody pull the wool over my eyes. And everybody who I've spoken to have a story to tell. They want answers. Sometimes we can't provide that answer, sadly. But we do our very, very best to try and help people, because some people are traumatised, by sightings of ghosts, etc., poltergeists. And they really take a very, very tough time of it. And we have to try and pacify that and help these people out, because who do they turn to? It's one of these subjects. It's one of these subjects, yeah.
Malcolm, stay tuned, because when we come back with Malcolm Robinson, we're going to get into this strange case of a UFO, ET contact, and a forestry worker named Robert Taylor. Next on Spaced Out Radio. All right, I'm going to quickly run my dogs out. I'll be right back, okay, my friend?
Okay, Dave, no problem.
Okay, sit tight.
Pick up. All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind.
All right, my friend, I'm back. We've got 2 minutes.
That's great, Dave. I forgot to mention about the UFO that we saw at Loch Ness. I don't know if you just quickly want to, when we go back, mention that, and then we could talk about Bob Taylor. But I really want to get into some juicy ghost stories that I've as well. I know we covered that at the first part of the show, but you know, if we've got time, certainly we can do that.
Oh yeah, we'll get into it for sure.
Yeah, because some of the stuff that I've seen ghost-wise is absolutely incredible.
And trust me, man, I want to hear some of those stories. I know our audience will too.
Are you getting any reports so far in the chat room? Anybody mention anything?
Oh, they're loving it. They are loving it. All right, we've got about just over a minute here.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Have you ever been to Scotland yourself, Dave?
No, I've never been outside of North America. I'm kind of trapped.
In point of fact, I'm actually living in England just now. I'm down in Hastings. I live in a small town called Hastings at the very, very foot of the United Kingdom. I can actually see the English Channel from my house. I left Scotland in 1998, but I go up to see family and friends and do lectures, etc., you know. And in point of fact, all being well, touch wood, we hope to go back to Scotland December, January time.
Right on. All right, everyone, this is a quick reminder that great way to support what we do on this show is to hit that thumbs up or down. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. The super chat is open for all of you if you want to support us that way as well. Do a little shopping on our website at the SOR Vault. We want to make sure that you guys get some swag and get our name out there as well. Don't forget to share the show. Here we go, guys, with hour 2.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. All of our archives are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Parali Pomenon. Paralipomenon is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking with author and researcher Malcolm Robinson. And if you missed the last half hour, we were talking about the Loch Ness Monster, where he actually went down in a submarine looking for this creature. Now they found nothing. That's all we could expect is nothing. But the fact is, it happened. And what it is, it's still a mystery to this day. We're going to get into some more UFO type stuff now with Malcolm. Malcolm, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Now, before we get into your famous story and book about Robert Taylor, you actually had a UFO sighting at the Loch.
Yeah, that's correct, Dave. Again, back in the 90s, we were doing some research at Loch Ness, speaking to people. And at the end of the evening, we sat down sharing a campfire on the shores of Loch Ness at a small place called Invermoriston. It was a lovely, lovely night, a star-spangled, sparkling myriad of stars in the dark night sky. And we were just talking about Nessie. There were Canadians, funnily enough. Canadians were with us, Americans, some Swedish people. And then suddenly, this lady screamed out, "What on earth is that?" And we all looked across the loch, at the other side of the loch, these big hills, and there was this tremendous ball of white light which was bouncing up and down above this hill. And I knew straight away that this wasn't a conventional helicopter or an aircraft of any description. The erratic manoeuvre was incredible. And suddenly it stopped and zoomed off into the sky and was gone in seconds. And just before we move to the Robert Taylor case, I'd just like to impress upon your listeners that Loch Ness has seen quite a substantial amount of UFO activity. And that's strange in itself. But I'll never forget that. I mean, we did checks with the Air Force and the police to see if anything was in the air at that given time on that particular night. and it came up nothing. Nothing was in the air. And we have to bear in mind is not all UFOs are structured objects. It can be these coloured balls of light as well, which makes it all the more interesting.
No kidding. Wow. That's just absolutely amazing that you had that sighting. Now, have you seen something like that before or since?
Well, I remember when I was a young boy, maybe about 9 or 10, I was playing football in a field next to a school, and it was a warm summer's day, and then some of the chaps who were playing football stopped and looked up into the sky and said, "What's that?" And I remember looking up as a young child into this clear blue sky, and there's this white egg-shaped object, about 30 foot in length, just hovering there, just oscillating slightly slowly. Now, I was only a young chap, but even then I knew, my God, this is strange. And then suddenly it just disappeared and was gone in seconds. Over the years, I've had many sightings. Bonnybridge in Scotland, in central Scotland, has seen a hell of a lot of UFO sightings over the years. And I've managed to see some strange craft in the skies in Bonnybridge as well, simply because we put ourselves in that ballpark. We do a lot of sky watching, not just in Scotland, but in England as well. And because you're putting yourself in the ballpark, you get to see these strange objects. Now, admittedly, a lot of young people are fooled by these small specks of light traversing the night sky. You and I know them as satellites. But some young people may say, "Is that a UFO?" So it's all about an education process when we do our sky watching. We tell people what's to look for, satellites, etc., shooting stars, and what other things to look for as well. So it's all an education, with looking at the night sky, yeah.
Wow, incredible. You have reported on a case that many North American people may not be very familiar with, and it's a case about a forestry worker named Robert Taylor who had an absolutely incredible encounter with some unidentified aerial phenomena. A lot of us, including myself, look at this case, or when we think of cases like this, we think of Travis Walton over here. We think of Betty and Barney Hill. We think of, Chris Bledsoe. Stories like this are extremely rare. And when we think of the United Kingdom, it always points usually to Rendlesham because it happened on a military base. Why is the Robert Taylor case so special?
It's special for a lot of reasons, Dave. I mean, the case is absolutely astonishing. It occurred, as you said, to forestry worker Robert Taylor back in November the 9th, 1979. Now, this was the big case that took me off the fence because I was just starting off on my journey in 1979, and I investigated this case as well as a number of other researchers. But the story goes that on the morning of November the 9th, 1979, Robert Taylor jumped into his pickup truck. He was accompanied on the ride into the forest with his Irish red setter dog Lara. Now, his job was to ensure that no cattle or sheep strayed into the woods. It was a very mundane job. Now, he was 61 years of age. He had no interest in UFOs whatsoever. He was just a normal, down-to-earth chap. And he had heard about UFOs, of course, as we all have, on newspapers and television, but not a clear-cut interest at all. It was the furthest thing from his mind. However, on that journey into the forest, everything changed for him. His whole life changed. As he drove into the forest, he got out of his pickup truck and he walked down this forestry path, as I say, with his dog Lara. And the path then kind of veered off into a small clearing in the forest. And he was absolutely amazed to see this large dome-shaped object hovering about 20 or 30 feet above the surface of this small grassy slope. This object had a large flange going around the circumference of it, and coming up from this flange was these cross-like projections. He's standing there. He can't believe it. His dog is barking at this thing. And then suddenly, this machine, or whatever you may want to call it, disappeared. It solidified, then disappeared. You could see the young trees behind it. It was disappearing and coming back into full solidity. And he just couldn't believe it. Now, if things couldn't get any stranger, they did. Because what happened next, Dave, was what resembled those Second World War sea mines that you got during the Second World War in the North Atlantic, those spherical balls with these rod-like projections, which, if they came in contact with any ship, the ship would blow up. Well, similar to that, two of them descended from beneath this hovering object and impacted onto the grassy slope and started rolling across the grass towards the startled Mr. Taylor. And he's aghast. He just can't believe what he's looking at. And then suddenly, these two objects stopped, and they projected these rod-like projections, these spiky bits coming up, these spherical balls, towards his person. And they grabbed him at his hips, on each side of his hips, and pulled him very, very forcibly towards this hovering object. And Mr. Taylor said to me in an interview, he said, Malcolm, I remember a horrible burning smell, like burning brake linings. As you applied the brakes to your car very quickly, you would get that smell of the brakes coming up from from the floor. Horrible smell. And then a swishing sound, as if you had a cane and you swished it through the air. And then silence. He just was totally unconscious. He fell to the forest floor. Now, we're not entirely sure how long he was unconscious for. But when he regained consciousness, he looked. The larger object was gone, the smaller objects were gone, and there were only over 40 holes and impressions in the grass, both triangular and circular indentations in the grass. He had a nasty graze under his chin, he had a graze on his forehead, he had a pounding headache, and he tried to stagger up and he noticed that his trousers were torn. And his jersey was all muddy, and he walked or staggered back to his pickup truck and tried to radio base to call for help, but he couldn't speak. He had lost his voice. And then sadly, he kind of reversed the truck into a ditch, and he couldn't get the back wheels. They were spinning out of this ditch. So he struggled back to his home, which was only maybe a quarter of a mile away. It sat adjacent to Dechmont Woods. And when his wife saw him, she went, "What's happened to you? Look at you. What on earth has happened to you?" And Mr. Taylor said these immortal words. He says, "I've been attacked." "You've what?" "I've been attacked." "Attacked by who? By men?" "No, by some spaceship thing." And his wife says, "Look, come in. There's no such things as a spaceship. Come in. I think you need to see your doctor." So they phoned for the local GP. The local doctor came and attended Robert Taylor at his home. They checked the blood pressure. His heart was obviously still beating. The doctor noticed the graze under his chin. And he decided, he says, "Look, I think you should go to the local hospital, Bangor Hospital, purely just to get a checkup." Now, he went to the hospital. He waited 1 hour. He waited 2 hours, and nobody came near him. So he decided to discharge himself without being seen by any hospital staff. Now, whilst he was at the hospital, his wife had phoned her husband's boss, Mr. Malcolm Drummond, the forestry boss, the main man. And she told him, "Look, my husband's had an experience in Dechmont Woods. I think you better come over and see what's going on here." So Mr. Drummond came to the house. By that time, Robert Taylor was back at the house, and both men went up to Dechmont Woods, and Robert Taylor says, "Look, there it is, look on the grass, look." And clearly there were all these marks in the grass. So Robert's boss decided to get in touch with the police, because effectively, Dave, this was an assault by person or persons unknown. Joking aside, it truly was an assault. So the police became involved. They fenced off the area. Yep, the forensic guys could see the marks in the grass. They took away Robert Taylor's trousers to the forensic department at Lothian and Borders Police in central Scotland, and they analysed the trousers. Now, I have interviewed a gentleman by the name of Lester Knibb, who was the chief scientist, forensic guy at the police, and he says, "Malcolm, These trousers were ripped in a mechanical way. They were pulled upwards, ripping the cloth, ripping the trousers at both sides. Take it from me, Malcolm. These rips were not made by any forest debris, i.e., sharp twigs, sharp stones, barbed wire. These were pulled in an upwards manner. And this case is the only case in the British Isles that's had a full investigation by the police. And to this day, it stands the test of time as one of the most puzzling aspects of Scottish ufology. And I gave a lecture on this case in Scotland last year, and it was absolutely packed out. You couldn't get any more people in. We broke every health and safety rule going because there were people sitting on the floor, standing on the side of the aisles. The local people wanted to know what had truly happened to one of their sons, And I've interviewed the police on many occasions, and they says, Malcolm, we actually know Robert Taylor because he plays bowls. I'm sure you play that in Canada, and bowling greens. He says, at the local bowling club, I knew him from there. He's just a normal guy. He would never make up a story such as this. And over the course of the years since 1979, there have been upwards of about a dozen explanations put forward by other Scottish ufologists to try and explain what Robert Taylor may have saw in the woods. One of those explanations was that Robert Taylor, the witness, ingested what's known as Atropa belladonna, which is a berry that can cause hallucinations, or in some cases, depending on how much berries you take, can actually cause death. So you've got to steer away from this kind of berry. But the fact remains is, I did some research and there's no such plant called Atropa belladonna in Dechmont Woods. And even if they were, Dave, Robert Taylor is an educated man. He would know that taking those berries, trying to eat them, or even rubbing them in your hands, he would know how dangerous they can be. So it certainly wasn't that, And back in 1993, we erected a cairn there to commemorate this. And latterly, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've fought extensively with West Lothian Council to try and get some signage up in Dechmont Woods. As some of your listeners may know, there's a lot of signage in Rendlesham Forest directing visitors to where this alleged UFO landed in Rendlesham Forest. Well, I honestly believed that we really, really needed to have something similar in Dechmont Woods because people were coming from all over the world and they couldn't find the location because there were no markers there. So thankfully, over the last year or so, we've got some signage up there. We've got a big plaque up there. We've got the cairn up there, all to show people that this incident happened. Now, the crux of the matter is, what happened? We only have the witness's testimony, to go by. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's one of Scotland's, if not Great Britain's, biggest cases of its kind, but we only have the testimony of the witness and, of course, the marks on the grass and the testimony of the police, etc. But it all points to something clearly happening there. Everything mixed together makes this a standalone case in the annals of British ufology.
There was a lot of skeptics going out there trying to debunk this case. Everything being considered that the markings were made by PVC pipes, to the fact that he had an epileptic seizure, and that's what caused the injuries to him when he fell and couldn't control his body. I mean, we hear a lot of this kind of thing happen during these big cases from people who were not there, but they just do not want to believe. Why are you so profoundly speaking that this case is an actual UFO event comparatively to what a lot of these skeptics have claimed about it?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we have to accept the fact that we do need to listen to skeptics. We do need to look at the other side of the coin. It would be remiss of me and my colleagues to just willy-nilly believe everything is a bona fide UFO. You mentioned about the pipes. We checked with the water board to see if there were any pipes that may have lain on that patch of grass at that time. Now, admittedly, the water board were conducting work in Dechmont Woods, but not at that location. and because you have also track-like marks as well. So skeptics have said, well, maybe that was some form of machinery, these caterpillar tracks, and it was left there. So myself and the police checked with the West Lothian Council, where they do all the diggers and all the plant machinery, etc. And none of these tracks matched, from these devices, these machines, matched what was in the forest floor. They're totally different. So it certainly wasn't that. But to answer your question as to why I believe that it is a bona fide UFO, simply because of the characteristics of the actual object itself, the witness himself, the police investigation, all for me shows that something real happened there. And what we also have to bear in mind is the aspects of this large dome-shaped object as it blended in with the young trees in the background, solidified and desolidified. That is consistent with numerous similar cases worldwide of where some of these objects just blend and disappear and come back into reality again. And we may ask ourselves, and I should mention that on that eventful morning, other people saw that object from various other locations. So it's a backup testimony as well, Dave. It's a backup testimony from people not related, from a radius of around about 5 or 6 miles from Dechmont Woods, who saw an object descend into the woods. So it clearly, I've looked at the possibility it may have been a remotely piloted vehicle from the army, from the military. They didn't confirm that. We asked the question, but would they confirm it? If it was a military exercise ongoing in Dechmont Woods, then surely they would have informed the local police, the local authorities that, hey, we're doing this exercise with these remote-controlled vehicles. They've got to tell somebody, surely. So as a researcher myself, it's all about dotting the I's, crossing the T's. What could answer this? What could answer this? And I firmly believe, from being an ardent skeptic when I started, that we, i.e. mankind, are dealing with some form of non-human intelligence. It's always been with us. We have this famous Scottish abduction case, which I hope you would allow me to tell next. So we have all these aspects, and I'm convinced of the sincerity of people. People can lie. Police officers can lie. Men of the cloth can lie. We know that. But at the end of the day, Great Britain, as well as the rest of the world, is dealing with a bona fide UFO phenomena of craft, which is unbelievable. And the characteristics and the speed and the manoeuvres and what's going on is incredible.
Malcolm Robinson is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Malcolm, with this report that Robert had, he is now deceased, but, did he ever have any follow-up contact with these UFOs or the whatever species it was that was trying to explore him?
Sadly not. You're correct. Sadly, he died some years ago there. But I did often ask him that. I said, Bob, have you had any further visits, before you retired from the forestry department? He says, no. He says, I haven't. He says, I've had strange dreams, but I don't know if it's just strange dreams. We also asked him if he had any marks on his body, which, as abductees will know, is very consistent with abduction stories. He was hypnotically regressed, unfortunately, not by a professional hypnotherapist. He was regressed by a stage hypnotherapist, and I wasn't privy to that, so I was really annoyed at that. And all we could ascertain from that hypnosis was up until Bob lost consciousness, there was this black void. There was no penetrating this black void if there were another story beyond that black void. But clearly he remembers under hypnosis the whole day, the whole events, And I've spoken to some of his colleagues, his workmates, and he says, Malcolm, he was an honest man. He would never dream of making up this story. He was embarrassed by the story coming out in the newspapers. He was embarrassed by the television things. So he didn't really want the attention.
Right. Malcolm, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to get into other UFO stories. We're going to get into some ghost stories. Lots to cover with Malcolm Robinson. UFOs in the UK, the Loch Ness Monster, How haunted is Scotland and the entire Commonwealth? More on Spaced Out Radio after this. Any chance I get to use the word Commonwealth, I do.
Aye.
All right.
I think. So, what time is it in Canada at the moment, Dave?
I am on Pacific time because I'm on the West Coast, and we are at 10:30 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good stuff.
I've been.
And what time do we close the show? Because I can speak forever. I really can.
You and me have 1 hour left together. I told you this would fly by.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. I'm enjoying it.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're aware that I wrote a book about the Dechmont case, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. And that contains all the various theories. There was another researcher claimed he saw the planet Venus. He saw black ball lightning, etc. There's so many different theories, which we look into. And, you know, you got to look at these theories and see if there's any grain of truth in them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was out, actually, this is for my audience, too. So I'll give you the backstory. There's an area out here where I live. I live right in the middle, on top of the mountains here in central British Columbia. And we were in an area a few weeks ago, or a couple of years ago, where we actually have what we felt was Sasquatch talking to us. And we didn't get it on tape, unfortunately. But I set up about 4 weeks ago, I set up a gifting site at this area, and kind of put it in a little bit of a hidden area where people don't normally walk, and there's one way entrance in and one entrance out to this area. And it's probably, from where we are right now, it's probably 35 kilometers southwest of where I am. And that's right in the middle of the forest. Long story short, my friend Mark, his daughter put a nickel, a worn-out 1960s nickel, on this fallen tree that was rotting away. Just kind of laid it on an area there, and they photographed it. When we went back 2 weeks ago, the nickel was gone. And there was mild movement of our stuff that we had set up there, but not enough to convince us that something weird had happened. Well, we went back Saturday night, and we're looking around, and nothing really seems to have moved. And then all of a sudden my son says, "Hey, Dad," because he's 7 years old. He goes, "Hey, Daddy, what's with the coin on top of the ball here?" And there was, I've got this, I don't know what it is. It's like a plastic stick with a purple orb on it, okay? And sitting on top of that plastic ball is a 2019 nickel.
Wow.
So the original nickel is gone. There's a 2019 shiny nickel there, and it's sitting right on top of this orb where any rainfall or wind would blow that nickel off. And I just cannot, for the life of me, out of everywhere to place that nickel, why, if it's a human being, they would put it right on there, knowing that the chances of it falling off are very, very high, number one. But number two, you know, out of all the coins to grab, it's highly coincidental that they grabbed, if it was a human, that they grabbed a nickel out of their pocket.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know? So we don't know what the hell is going on, because that area, if we went 50 yards to the east of us, there is a plane crash site where there was 52 people killed back in 1965. So we have paranormal activity right in the middle of the forest where we have Sasquatch activity. It's just weird there. I don't get it. I really don't get
bizarre,
it.
Yeah. That's a location I'd love to investigate myself, There's so many sightings of this Sasquatch, and again, you got to say, is it some form of bear or something else?
Oh, yeah.
Very elusive, though. Very elusive.
So we're going back this weekend, and we're actually going to set up a trail cam to see if it is a human that is playing around there or if it's something completely different. So hold on 1 second because we're going to get going here in about 5 seconds. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking with author and researcher Malcolm Robinson about a lot of the weird and strange that's happening in the United Kingdom when it comes to ghosts, UFOs, cryptid creatures like the Loch Ness Monster. I have to ask Malcolm, before we get too heavily into some more UFO stories that you have been covering, all right, is the fact, have you ever ran into the leprechauns?
No, not yet. Probably not yet.
Are you close?
No, not very close at all. But, they're all these little fanciful creatures. You've got the trolls of Scandinavia, the pixies, the leprechauns, all these mythical creatures. But certainly no, I've not. Then, obviously, we're looking at fairies as well. I've got a gentleman that's taken a photograph of a fairy, which we researched a few years ago, which is another story, perhaps, for your listeners.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, there's a chap with a fanciful name of Alien Bill Rourke, a lovely guy. He stays in the town of York in England. And he's taken over the years some incredible photographs of orbs and wispy lights in the night sky. Recently, he had a missing time experience. But to mention about the fairy, he was at this church, Edward Confessor Church in York, and he saw this little ball of light initially. So he decided to take a photograph. And on the photograph, you can see this winged creature. Now, it's not an insect. It's got a little body, a head, legs. I know some of your listeners will be finding this very, very incredulous and hard to believe. So we sent the image off to various professors here in the United Kingdom. We never said it was a fairy. We says, look, what kind of insect is this? And each and every one of these professors said it was a moth, it was a type of insect. None of them committed to saying it was a fairy. And it's quite a bizarre photograph. I need to send it to your website so that your listeners and your good self can have a look at this.
That is just awesome. I would love to see that photo, and I know our listeners would as well. Okay, so sticking with UFOs here for a few minutes, because I know you are loaded with ghost stories that you want to share, and I want to get to those, considering we are on the home stretch to Halloween over here in North America. But when it comes to UFOs, how much traffic is there in the sky regarding this phenomena? And are people getting abducted more so than North America, or is it the same?
Well, like I say, it's certainly a global phenomena. As to the statistics, as anybody's guess, each and every one of us researchers can come away with various degrees of statistics. I would certainly say that Scotland as a nation has seen its fair share of UFOs, more so between the years of 1992 and 2002 above the small Scottish town of Bonnybridge that I mentioned earlier. I did some tremendous work with there with a local councillor, Billy Buchanan. And such were the sightings in Scotland, to answer your question, that we initially got in touch with the British Prime Minister John Major, and we says, look, we elected you into office. We have a serious concern here in central Scotland of some unusual air activity, which we are convinced is not normal aircraft or helicopters, and we want a government inquiry into what's going on in central Scotland. Now, John Major poo-pooed it. We went to the Ministry of Defence in London, and they said, as these objects do not constitute a threat to the defence of the United Kingdom, the British government will not seek to undertake any investigation of the claims of residents of central Scotland. We were infuriated by that, Dave. We also got in touch with successive British Prime Ministers, Gordon Brown, etc., Tony Blair, and it just falls on deaf ears, you know. So Scotland as a nation has certainly had its fair share of UFO cases. As far as the abductions goes, the one of Scotland's best UFO abduction cases on record is what's called the A70 incident. Massive case. I'll be very brief because it is massive. It all transpired on an August evening back in 1992 when two friends, Gary Wood and Colin Wright, were driving in their car. They had left the built-up city of Edinburgh. They left Edinburgh and they drove down the A70 road. Now, as the A70 leaves Edinburgh, it travels down the countryside and you've got fields on either side. Nothing but fields. The odd farmhouse, very barren landscape, farmland, sheep, etc., very barren. So they're driving down and their destination was a small village called Tarbrax. And that they were going to visit some people. It was around about 10:30 at night. It was dark, and they were travelling down, listening to the radio on the car, and then suddenly, about 200 to 300 yards further up the road, on this blind bend, was this large black inky-shaped craft hovering silently, motionless, above the surface of the road. And immediately both men knew straight away, whoa, this is not an aircraft. What is this? And rather than stop the car and go back, because they were quite alarmed at this, you know, this was only 20, 30 feet above the road, Dave. And rather than go back, they decided the best course of action was put the foot on the gas, foot to the floor, and scream underneath this object and get away from this area. That was the plan. So as the car was directly underneath this hovering object, this object emitted like a silver shimmering curtain of light particles descended from beneath this hovering craft and hit their car. And as soon as this effect hit the car, both men were enveloped in total and inky blackness. They couldn't see their hand in front of their face. They couldn't see each other. They couldn't see the dashboard of the car. They thought they were dead. Then seconds later, thankfully, they regained their sight. Gary was struggling with the steering wheel of the car, trying to keep the car on the road, or it could have crashed into a grass verge. Managed to control the car, and they just screamed away to their destination of Tarbrax. They knocked on the occupant's door, and the occupants who opened the door says, "Where have you been? You're an hour and a half late. You should have been here ages ago." And Gary says, Malcolm, he said to me, he says, "Malcolm, the journey should only have taken about 30, 35 minutes, and we're an hour and a half late." So they proceeded to go into the occupant's house. They came away with this bizarre story of seeing this strange object in the night sky hovering above their car. And of course, there were a lot of laughter going on. And Gary was perplexed and Colin was perplexed. So saying, no, this happened. Now that night and subsequent nights thereafter, Dave, both men had strange dreams of these small grey beings coming into their dream world. They also found scars on their body, scars that previously were not there, scoop-like marks. We all go into the shower, we all know our bodies, and say, "Oh, what's this? they found these scars. Then Gary thought to himself, surely this cannot be one of these crazy UFO stories, can it? What if it is? Who do I go to? Do I go to my doctor? Do I go to the police? I don't know. So he decided his best course of action would be go to a library in Edinburgh, to the kind of paranormal UFO section. And he found a book written by a famous British authoress, Jenny Randalls, a lovely lady. And at the back of that book were a lot of was addresses of various societies, one of which was mine, Strange Phenomena Investigations. To cut a long story short, Gary phoned me up and told me this story, and I went, wow, this is crazy. Okay, yeah, we want to hear from you. So we arranged for Gary and Colin to visit my home. We interviewed them separately, although, of course, by that time they would have spoken anyway, but we still interviewed them separately. And we took down their testimony of this. And I said to Gary and Colin, guys, would you like to go under hypnotic regression just to see if perhaps something else may have transpired that night? Would you? Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, we'll do anything. We need to know what's going on. Our wives don't believe us. We're getting made a fool of at work. Malcolm, we'll try anything. Now, at that time, I did advocate the use of hypnosis. Hypnosis has its pitfalls. You can please the hypnotherapist. It could be kryptonesia. It could be something you've read about as a child in a storybook or a UFO magazine or something you've saw on the television, and suddenly that springs forward in a hypnotic. So I'm aware of the dangers. But we'd felt it necessary to use hypnosis, Dave, because, let's be honest, the police use it. There's a famous case in England, a major robbery, and this lady saw the getaway car streaming away from a bank, and the police says, did you get the number plate? I think I did, but I'm not sure. But under hypnosis, she got that number plate absolutely perfect. So we know that the police use hypnosis for various cases. So we tried it. And under hypnosis, a typical abduction scenario unfolded. And I'm sure many of your lovely listeners are aware of the UFO abduction scenario. There were some differences, which I'll cover in a moment. This is what happened under hypnosis. The car, as I mentioned, was stopped. It was stopped on the road. They were taken out of this car. It sounds Hollywood. I'm sorry, it does sound Hollywood, but this is what they said. They were taken out of the car by these small grey creatures, 3.5 to 4 feet tall, childlike bodies, inky black almond-shaped eyes, pear-shaped heads. I'm sure your listeners and yourself are aware of this.
Oh, who hasn't seen aliens before here?
And they were taken on board this craft, call it what you will, and subjected to some form of medical or clinical experimentation independently. They were not together. Gary found himself on this flat, raised table, completely naked. He couldn't move a muscle. He could only move his eyeballs, and he was terrified. And he saw two of these creatures at the foot of this metal bed. One of them was holding a pendulum-like device and moving up and down his body. He also remembers a can-shaped device floating up from the floor of this object, and then it was like a lip or some kind of device, this coming up from the can with a red light, and it was spinning around. He also recalls looking up into the ceiling of this curved room. It's like a black oinks, kind of marbly shaped circular device, just slowly spinning and turning. On another occasion, he remembered, and this sounds bizarre, but this is what he said. He says, Malcolm, I don't know whether to tell you this. I said, Gary, you've got to tell me anything you recall. And he says, okay, I'll tell you. He says, as I could only move my eyes, Malcolm, I looked down onto the floor and I saw, it was like water or a man's shaving gel bubbling on the floor, and coming out of this was one of these small grey creatures. And he says it had strange ribs. I said, did you see ribs? Well, I'm not sure. He says it might, and he said an interesting thing here, Dave. He says it might be heavy folds of skin rather than ribs. And some of the differences from worldwide abduction cases were that some of these creatures had yellow, green, and blue lines under these black, inky almond-shaped eyes. Some of these creatures, apart from the pear-shaped head, had an indentation in their head. Now, Colin, on the other hand, his testimony, he was in a different room. He wasn't on a flat raised table. He was in a kind of curved chair, and he couldn't move. And this needle-like device came down from the ceiling and penetrated his eye. He was screaming. I was there at the hypnosis, Dave. And when this happened under hypnosis, he screamed, and he came out of hypnosis straight away and almost landed on me with fright, you know. And on another occasion, Colin remembers being encased in this it was like, if you can imagine a cigar tube, only about 6 or 7 feet tall, see-through. He found himself naked, strapped in this, and he could only move his eyes, and to the left and to the right and forward, he could see similar big perspex or glass tubes with other people naked inside them. There was also this swirling mist that was pervading all around these tube-like affairs, very mysterious. And then it started to frost up. He couldn't see it. It was like an instantaneous frost effect appeared in the glass, and he started to cry. He started to show his fear, and then it defrosted again, and he could see out of it. Probably one of the most unusual aspects, again, of this incredible case is going back to Gary. Gary's still lying on this flat table, and Gary says, Malcolm, something else has happened, but again, I don't know whether to tell you. Gary, what have I said? Tell me everything. Even the minutest detail can help the study of UFO abductions. Tell me, what is it? Well, when I was lying there on this table and I looked down onto the floor, I saw a naked female. She had this kind of shaggy permed hair, and she had her knees up to her chin with her arms folded around her knees, and she gently turned her head, and I could see tears running down her face. She clearly was traumatized herself. Now, the story it's such a big case. I'm only, as I say, mentioning briefly bits of this. We, with the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, they conducted a lie detector test on Gary, and Gary passed with flying colours. Now, over the years, and this is getting back to a story you asked me earlier, do witnesses see things later on in life? Colin was out driving in his car on the outskirts of Edinburgh, and he had his 2 young sons in the back of the car, and then suddenly, bang, outside the car was enveloped in this beautiful white light, but he knew straight away it was something to do with these greys, and it just disappeared. Now, his wife, Gary's wife, never ever believed him until one night I received a telephone call in my house. I picked it up. Yes, and it was Gary's wife. Malcolm, yes, can I apologise to you? Well, why? And what she told me, Dave, was this. She says, Malcolm, I was in my bed next to Gary. Gary was sleeping, and I was reading a book in my bed. It's late at night. I closed the book. I put the book on the bedside table. I switched the bedside lamp off, and within 30 seconds, some small, cold, clammy hands grabbed my ankles and pulled me very, very forcibly down the bed, whereas my head was not on the pillow anymore. It was halfway down the bed. And I looked, and in this soft light, it was coming through the curtains. There was an outside street lamp, and the curtains, through the break in the curtains, there was sufficient light to see. She saw 2 grey creatures wobble through the wall, just like a rippling effect, and disappear. She says, Malcolm, I am so sorry. I believe you now. I believe him now.
That just triggered an encounter, I don't know what the hell it was, happened about 4 years ago to me, where I don't know if it was alien or not, but I had just started to get into that deep sleep. I turned my, every night I go to bed and I, play a game or something on my phone after the show, and I just started to, doze off, and all of a sudden I felt my ankle raise up in the air, like somebody was picking up my ankle, and I'm lying on my back, and I feel this happening to my right foot. And I just kind of turned my head and I said, "Do you mind? I'm trying to sleep here." And my entire ankle goes right back down, like somebody is gently placing it back on the bed. So when I snickered there, it totally triggered that example of something that had happened to me. So with that happening, I mean, it's so nice, in a weird way, it's so nice to get that confirmation, from a loved one or someone close to the situation who is so skeptical that they're like, "I don't believe this," and all of a sudden they're like, "Malcolm, I'm on Team Malcolm now. I'm on Team Weirdo."
Yeah.
Okay. So with this case, okay, and the fact that they got aliens, all right, did this continue on as we got about 3 minutes left?
Not to my knowledge, other than the light surrounding the car. Oh, actually, yes, it did. What I'm about to tell you and your lovely listeners may sound absolutely bizarre and incredible, but I've got to be honest, I've got to tell the truth, I've got to say it as it is, because it's all part of the UFO enigma. So what happened was that Gary awoke one night, several months after the initial incident, and he saw one of these small grey creatures standing at the foot of his bed. Now, Gary thankfully, he wasn't immobilised. He just jumped out of bed, and I know it sounds crazy, but he punched one of these little grey creatures, and it somersaulted the length of the bedroom. And it looked so surprised, if black eyes can be surprised, it looked so surprised at being seen and being hit, it just melted away into nothingness. It just disappeared. Now, I can understand listeners, sceptical listeners, listening to this and saying, "What a load of rubbish," And, it does sound crazy. Of course it does. But that is why you, your listeners, and everybody involved in the subject love this subject so, so much, simply because it is so bizarre. And that's what makes it incredible. But we have to sort out the wheat from the chaff. We have to dissect what is true and what is not true. We haven't any true proof that this encounter happened other than the witness testimony of this case, of cases in Canada, of America. Yes, again, photographs, marks in the body, etc., hypnosis. All this combined introduces to people like myself that we're dealing with something real and tangible. And like I said earlier in the show, I now believe that we're dealing with some form of alien abduction. Purpose? What could it be? Some people say it's an alien hybrid program. I know a number of females who have been re-abducted and shown this hideous, half-human, half-alien child. And telepathically, it comes into the witness's mind, he belongs to you. He's part of you. Again, it sounds fanciful. If it is a genetic interbreeding, they're taking sperm and ova from males and females to repopulate a dying planet. Why? It's been going on now. The taking of genetic material has been going on for over 50, 60 years. Surely they have enough genetic material. Is it souls they're after? Is it they want to be like us to some degree? I don't have the answer, and anybody that claims they do have the answer must be a better man and woman than me. We can only speculate on answers. But therein lies the answer. Therein somewhere within the quagmire of all these UFO stories and abduction stories is indeed the true answer. It may be a genetic interbreeding program, but I don't accept and understand why it's still ongoing today.
With less than 45 seconds to go here, you have to wonder, with so much strange happening around, we haven't even touched the paranormal yet. We've barely even delved into that, and I want to do that the next half hour with you that we have with you, Malcolm, because I bet you got some incredible stories.
I've got so many stories. I could be here forever telling you.
Well, I look forward to it, and hopefully some of them include some bagpipes, man, because I like a good bagpipe every now and again. So, by the way, if you have bagpipes with you, I know it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning where you are. Okay, if you want to lay on the bagpipes the next half hour, I'm okay with that too.
I don't think the neighbors will be.
Oh, tell them you're doing it for your friends in North America. They'll understand. Promise. Malcolm, you hold on tight because we are going to go into break here, and 2 hours down, 1 hour to go here on Spaced Out Radio, where we have author and researcher Malcolm Robinson. You can find all of his books on Amazon, and I highly suggest you really get into some cool stories that we may or may not have heard of right here in North America. And we're going to get into some ghost stories with Malcolm next to kick off Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio. All right, my friend, we're clear.
Good stuff.
Just going to quickly run my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, cheers. Thanks.
All right.
$5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units, pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblelicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the
I'm back.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
There we go. Oh.
How's your dogs? Are they okay?
Oh,
yeah?
they're good. They're good. They're old guys.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I enjoy them.
Good stuff.
Yeah, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats.
Yeah, I'm more a kind of cat guy myself. Brought up with cats all my life, and I suppose if we had dogs in the family home, I would have been a dog lover as well. But it's more cats for me, you know. But I'm generally an animal lover all round, you know.
For sure.
So you never been to the UK though? I know I mentioned Scotland.
No, I would love to go.
Do you manage to get to attend any conferences over there in North America?
I usually attend a couple a year. I had one canceled this year due to COVID. I got one in earlier on in the year in San Francisco, and like 8 days after I got home, the border was shut down, and it was kind of nuts, but that's okay.
Yeah, sadly the Scottish UFO and Paranormal conference in June had to be cancelled because of COVID, and then I was due to be speaking about the Socky poltergeist next month. That had to be cancelled. Obviously it's affecting everything, you know, all over the world. Football matches, basketball, you name it. It's one of these things. Let's hope that this runs its course eventually. It's terrible.
Absolutely. I can't wait for it to finally clear up.
Get back, back to normal.
My listeners and I are dying for a spaced out radio party in Las Vegas. So we can't make it happen until all this stuff is cleared up, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Hold on one second, my friend, because we're going to come back in like 5 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Kimberly, for the super chat tonight. Really do appreciate that. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. I'm Dave Scott, the guy behind the microphone. Yes, my hair is looking just fantastic tonight. We want to welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. I don't even know how to pronounce this one, Clam. Paralipomenon is your password, however you pronounce it. The Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Malcolm Robinson. He is an author and researcher out of the United Kingdom, looking into all things weird and strange. We're going to go down the ghostly path here momentarily. I want to remind all of you that you can find any of Malcolm's books on Amazon. Highly suggest you do that. Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be on your show, Dave. It's fantastic.
Well, we hope you've had a lot of fun because you're one heck of a storyteller, my friend, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, Dave, it's the paranormal aspect of my research that takes up most interest for me. Although UFOs and cryptozoology is fantastic to be involved with, it's a ghosty side, it's a paranormal side that really, shines a light for me. And I remember when I was growing up, I was working for a company called United Glass, based in the town of Alloa. They manufactured whiskey bottles. And everybody knew that I was more or less off my head and I was chasing ghosts and UFOs. But they were okay about it. The vast majority were fine and they were accepting of it, apart from one man. He says, Malcolm, you are totally off your head. There are no such things as ghosts and stuff. He says, but I'll tell you what, Malcolm, when I die, and God forbid it's many, many years from now, but when I die, if there is such a thing as a life after death, I'll come back and I'll show you. I went, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So many years passed, Dave. Many years transpired. Then I got up for what we call a day shift. We started at 6 a.m. in the morning. We finished at 2 in the afternoon. I got up about 5 o'clock. The house was quiet as a mouse. Very quiet. The wife was sleeping upstairs, and I went downstairs into the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, all quiet. And then suddenly, you know when you get that feeling, Dave, when somebody is standing behind you. We've all had it, a feeling that somebody's staring at you or looking at you.
Oh, yeah.
So I slowly turned round and I saw nothing. Oh, where did that feeling come from? Wow, that was strange. So I went into my work. I went into the mess room where all, before the start of the shift, and all my mates were with their head in their hands. They're all going, and I says, "What's the matter with you?" "Oh, did you not hear, Malcolm?" Hear what? Wee Bobby Smith died last night. Now, that was the man, Dave, who said years and years before, if there is such a thing as a life after death, by golly, I'll come back and I'll do my damnedest to try and prove it to you. Now, admittedly, I didn't know he died. I didn't see him, Dave. But I definitely felt a strong, strong presence behind me that morning as I got up from my work. And that was just a fascinating thing for me. But probably one of the most interesting things I've ever seen in my life to do with the paranormal was the occasion when I attended a lady's house in Chingford on the outskirts of London. I used to give lectures in London, and this lady came up to me and says, "Malcolm, would you like to see dead people?" Now, you don't get that request all the time. So I said, of course. So to cut a long story short, we went to her house in Chingford. She says, "Yeah, tonight I'm bringing on board a psychic who is going to go into trance. There's going to be quite a lot happening. And I hope you're prepared for it, Malcolm." I says, yeah, for sure. So we went up into one of the small back bedrooms. It was devoid of any furnishings or fittings. There was no bed. There were only 2 pieces of bedroom furniture. In the room was a tall kind of sideboard type of thing, cupboard with a small red ambient light on top of it. And there was a small chest of drawers in the corner. And in the corner of this room was a black drape going from one corner to the other corner, and behind it was a small chair. And I says, "What's going on here?" "Oh, when the psychic comes up later this evening, Malcolm, he'll sit in that chair, he'll go into trance, and you watch what happens." I says, "Oh, thank you." So the gentleman eventually arrived. I padded him down to ensure that he wasn't secreting any devices to magically do things, And then we sat him in this chair. We strapped him into the chair with very strong, wide Velcro straps, so that if he tried to get out of these straps, you would have heard the pull, the rip of this Velcro strap. There was also these small little bells on the walls of this room. And then there was 4 or 5 people, including myself, facing this black curtain. He was behind it. Then the lady of the house switched the light off, and the room fell into darkness. Now, there was this small red light, and once your eyes got accustomed to the red light, you could see the other people facing this curtain beside you, the contours of the shoulders, the heads, etc. And then suddenly, all these little bells on the wall started to tinkle. And then a few moments later, the cloth just pushed out. There was a strange face moulded into the very, very fabric of the cloth and came right out into part of the room. Now, it wasn't the man behind the curtain. He was still sitting firmly in his chair. Because the cloth had risen up, you could see his legs. And then this horrible face was moving around like that, and it just moved back and fell away again. And at this point, there was a small chest of drawers sitting next to this cloth. It started to slowly move up into the air of its own accord. Nobody was near this little chest of drawers at all. It floated right up to the ceiling of this room, traversed slowly across the room, and fell slowly down on my toes. It was absolutely astonishing. Now, I know this next bit sounds crazy, but I've got to tell the truth. I'm not telling lies. At that point, a voice bounded out. "Was Mr. Robinson impressed by this?" And I said, "I'd be more impressed if you took it back." And then the voice says, "We shall see what we can do." Now, I made the cardinal sin, Dave. You should never, ever interrupt psychic phenomena when it's happening. You could harm the medium by doing so. But I decided in my infinite wisdom to hook my finger under one of the rims of these chest of drawers, and I said to myself, this thing is going nowhere. And again, nobody to the left of this, nobody to the right of this sideboard of drawers. And after 1 or 2 minutes, nothing was happening. And I was pulling it back, and then suddenly it just started to vibrate, and I could not hold it back any longer. It was like a knife going through butter. It left my finger and floated back up into the other side of the room and gently sat down where this gentleman was behind this curtain. And at this point, Dave, a tremendous burst of cold wind pervaded the whole room. It got icy cold. Your breath was freezing up in front of you. And then there were all these voices, male, female, young, old, from all aspects of the room, next to your ear, under your chair, next to your arm, next to somebody's head. All these strange spirit voices babbling away in some strange manner. And it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. The downside of that story is that prior to all that happening, the lady of the house says, I'm sorry, Malcolm, but you're not allowed to bring any audio equipment in, any cine films or video cameras or anything like that. That infuriated me because my job, as I said earlier in the show, is to provide proof to people. Because, again, this is just another lovely little story for your listeners. But it was true. I saw it with my own eyes. And that's the makeup of myself. I'm only here to try and impress upon people about these things. You know, recently I got told a story by this lady who knows me. She says, Malcolm, you know I work for the local hospital, don't you? I says, yeah. Well, one of the leading surgeons is off his work at the moment through stress. And I says, well, he's a leading surgeon. I mean, it's a stressful job. Oh, no, you're not realising what I'm trying to say to you, Malcolm. Well, tell me. She says, well, here goes. She says, he was walking down a corridor in the hospital, and he saw this elderly gentleman standing near some swing doors in the hospital corridor. And the surgeon approached the gentleman. He says, are you okay? You all right? And the gentleman replied, I think so. I'm not really sure. And just then, Dave, the surgeon's pager beeped. He says, excuse me a moment, sir, hold on. And he attended to his pager, and his pager was saying, you are requested in the resus room. So the surgeon turned round to say, you know, I've got to go now, but the gentleman wasn't there. He surmised that perhaps he went through the swing doors, although he didn't see him going through the swing doors. Now, there is a twist to this tale. So the surgeon went into the resus room, and he saw this man lying on bed with the paddles, you know, the electric shock paddles that try to jumpstart a body back into life. And I think you know what's coming, but here's the twist. So he looked down, and the man he saw in that bed was the man he saw in the corridor only moments before. So here's the twist. What happened then was they decided to go into the CCTV cameras and rerun the footage of maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes ago. And this is what they saw. They saw the surgeon walking down the corridor of the hospital, and then they saw him stop, and they saw him talking to nothing at all. Again, a lovely story, backed up with some footage, this time, although admittedly it shows nothing. And this is why it makes the subject so warm, so and fantastic, you know.
Considering how old and how historic the United Kingdom is for the last 1,000+ years, that's literally billions of people who have passed on that beautiful island that you get to call home. You know, with the castles and the haunted cemeteries and the taverns and the oceans all around with shipwrecks and everything in between, you know, there has to be some very famous hauntings there that you have, you know, really whittled down to your favorites.
Yeah, I mean, our job as a researcher takes us to not only family homes, but stately homes and castles and outbuildings, as many researchers will tell you, I'm sure, and they have done. I remember a case, my ex-hometown of Tullabuddy in Clackmannanshire in central Scotland. Again, this lady had problems in the house with ghostly manifestations. And we were in this back bedroom. It always seems to be bedrooms. We're in this back bedroom with the lights off. We had the video cameras going, the audio equipment going, in hopes of catching something. And then nothing was happening. And at times like that, I said, why do I do this? No sooner had I thought, why do I do this? Because nothing's happening. Suddenly, the whole room exploded in a myriad of tiny pinpricks of white dancing lights. It was everywhere, Dave. It was all over the walls, all over the ceiling, all over the carpet, all over your body. And I looked to her psychic and I went, whoa, what's going on? What's this? What's this? Oh, Malcolm, come on now, behave yourself. It's just pure psychic energy. I thought you would have known that. I went, it's wonderful. And it only lasted, Dave, maybe about 15, 20 seconds, and it just slowly dissipated and was gone. And the room was thrown into blackness again. So with fingers crossed, we went to the VCR equipment. We pressed stop, we pressed rewind, we pressed play, in the hopes that something would have been captured. This fantastic array of tiny lights would have been captured in video. Pressed play, nothing at all. And again, that's so infuriating. And even if we had have captured that wonderful sparkling light effect, Dave, the skeptics of the world would, you've done that in computer, Malcolm. Good job, yeah, good job, son, good job. So sometimes you just can't win. Even if you do have wonderful footage of some paranormal activity, the skeptics will be, they won't accept that. And that's the kind of downside of the paranormal to a degree. There was another case, incidentally, in Chingford, not Chingford, at the outskirts of London, where this was a case, Dave, where it's the first of its kind for myself and my group. And it's to deal, I've got to say this, it's to deal with a lady who claims that she was being sexually molested by a spirit. Now, it is a true phenomenon. Sadly, or thankfully I should say, it's not a thing that happens a lot. But she was in a very, very distressed state. We had to ask all the relevant questions. Some questions we don't like to ask because it can upset the witness. A question such as, are you on any medication, my dear? Are you on any drugs or anything? Why do you ask that? And we have to ask these questions because sometimes drugs may make people see things, And the story on this one was that I was with a girlfriend at the time, and we left the house for maybe 5-10 minutes to go outside and have a cigarette. So we finished the cigarette, Dave. We walked back into the house. I sat in one chair, my girlfriend sat in the other chair, and we looked at this lady who was getting bothered by these manifestations of the spirit. She was sitting in a chair in the middle of the room. Now, as true as I'm sitting here, this is what happened. I mentioned sparkly lights in the other case. Well, on this occasion, suddenly, these beautiful blue aquamarine globules of light was falling down all this lady's face, falling down all over this lady's body. And I let out a big girly scream. I really did. I was like, what's going on here? And my girlfriend, she's sitting at the other side of the living room, she said, oh my God. I says, can you see it? Can you see it? And the poor lady sitting in the chair in the middle of the room is going, what's going on? What are you looking at? And I looked at the psychic who was sitting there, and she was smiling, Dave. She was smiling at me. I says, what the hell is going on here? And she says, when you were out having a cigarette, I administered some psychic healing to the lady. So, Malcolm, what you are looking at is the remnants of that psychic healing that I've just administered to this lady to try and calm her down. And again, it was beautiful. I mean, how I wish yourself and your lovely listeners had seen this. But again, it's just a lovely story, but it's a true story. It happened. It was one of these things that I saw. Crazy.
Out of all the places that you have investigated, as we only got about 5 minutes left with you, is it the taverns? Is it the castles? Is it the forests that are more haunted? Where do you find a lot of the ghosts?
That's a good question. I mean, people would tend to say you would find them in every one of those locations you've just mentioned. I mean, my latest book on the Socky poltergeist concerned a young girl, 11-year-old Virginia Campbell, who came over from Donegal in Ireland and moved to Scotland. She didn't want to move to Scotland, but they were relocating. No sooner has she been in Scotland and strange paranormal poltergeist effects started to befall the house. And they were rippling on the girl's bed covers. Her pillow underneath her head moved 90 degrees. It got so bad that they got the local physician in, and he too saw these manifestations. There was a large linen chest in the bedroom, Dave, which contained a lot of pillows and covers. The lid of that linen chest started to rise up and bang, 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 bang down on top of itself. Then this linen chest moved several inches away from the wall and went back. There were sounds of bouncing balls. There were smells coming from the house. Now, if things couldn't get any worse, they followed the young girl to school, the local Socky primary school. And what happened there was, back in 1960, this is from when it happened, there was a lot of kids in classes in Scotland in 1960, upwards of 30, 40 kids in a class. And they were all busy writing away on their jotters, doing a little essay, apart from young Virginia Campbell, who had her forearms on the desk. And the teacher screamed up, "Virginia, what are you doing? Stop that. Stop that at once." And as soon as Virginia raised her forearms off her school desk, the desk lid started to move up and down very violently, up and down. Then an empty chair and table that was next to Virginia floated up into the air in full view of all these classmates. And they all screamed off, out the door. But probably one of the most perplexing things that happened in the Socky case was when young Virginia Campbell approached her teacher's desk. Again, think about 1960, big heavy oak wooden desk, big blackboard. There was a cane for pointing at the blackboard on the desk. And she approached the teacher's desk, put down her essay on the desk, and suddenly this cane, which had been lying flat on the table, started to vibrate. Then it stood up an end and started to go bang, bang, bang on top of the table and fell off the table. And at this point, this heavy oak table that started to rise about 2 or 3 inches off the floor and spin round, whereas the teacher's stomach was in front of the long part of the desk. Her stomach was now at the short part of the desk. And again, all the kids ran out. Now, what makes this case so special is many, up to about 6 or 7 Church of Scotland ministers also viewed this in the family home. 3 physicians, 3 doctors saw this as well. And the events also transpired in a nearby town of Dollar, because they decided, well, if we take young Virginia out of this house, maybe it won't happen elsewhere. It did. They moved her to another house. Bangings, rappings, noises transpired as well. There was an apple that floated out of a bowl inside the family house. The father's shaving brush came out of the kitchen and into the living room, and Virginia was hit on the face by a clock. It just suddenly flew off the wall. So that's just part of the story, which features my latest book, Socky Poltergeist. And it's one of Scotland's most incredible poltergeist cases. And I've only scratched the surface with that one,
Well, Malcolm, that just means we're going to have to bring you back at some time just to focus on ghost stories, and you could share a bunch of them with us that have really, really intrigued you over the years. I want to say a big thank you, Malcolm, for you coming on Spaced Out Radio. Early morning for you, late night for us. We really do appreciate it over here in North America.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Dave, and I would just like to thank yourself and your listeners. Every success. Please keep listening to Dave's show. Wonderful, wonderful show, and spread the word, spread the knowledge. The world is a far, far more stranger place than we can ever imagine, folks.
Very, very true, Malcolm. Thank you so much. And we encourage all of our listeners to head on over to Amazon to look up all the books from Malcolm Robinson. I think you would be very, very intrigued to add this collection to your library of weird and strange woo topics that we all know and love. Malcolm Robinson, everybody. So make sure you check him on out. Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. More Spaced Out Radio coming up right after the break. Great job, Malcolm. Great job. We'll give you a few claps. We'll give you a few claps for that.
No, thanks very much. I just love the subject so much.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, when I tell these true stories, I get so excited myself and carried away. But it's just great to share them with a different audience and bring some new stuff to people that may never have heard these stories before.
When's your next book coming out?
Well, I'm working on that just now, so probably not for a year or so. But
we have to have you on way before then, though.
Absolutely. And I can certainly put forward some of my colleagues, some British investigators. If you need some names for your show, I'm happy to do that.
I'll get Corey to reach out to you again, and we'd love to have them as much as we'd love to have the opportunity to speak with you again. You were absolutely phenomenal, and you paint a beautiful picture for the radio audience, my friend, and that is hard to do.
Thank you very much, David. It's much appreciated, and more strength to your good self. Long may you continue, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to let you go here because I got to prepare for the news. But you go have a wonderful day, and thank you for getting up early for all of us here in North America.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, and I dare say we'll speak again in the very near future, Dave.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend.
Cheers now. All the best.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
What a great guest. Holy cow. Corn's the booking guy? You nailed that. Nailed that one. Oh, yeah. You want to know what it's like to breathe out of my nose? Yeah, it doesn't work too well. Yeah. Don't worry, we got a half hour of the show left, Moonstone. Half hour. Sea Canal, Dave? What is Sea Canal? I don't get it. Okay, quick ghost story today. I was talking to a buddy of mine who lives north of me this morning, and he goes, Dave, I know you're into all the supernatural stuff, right? He goes, but do you deal with... Or UFO stuff. He goes, but do you deal with the supernatural stuff? I said, yeah. And he goes, I got to tell you something. I said, what? He goes, I'm sitting in my office, and I needed my stapler. And he goes, I looked at my office up and down, could not find my stapler at all. He goes, I took like 10, 15 minutes looking for my stapler, finally got frustrated, and I walked out to the secretary's desk and went and grabbed her stapler. And then when I came back, he goes, my stapler was sitting right in the middle of my desk, right in front of my keyboard. I went, no way. And his business was closed. They're closed on Mondays. And he literally goes in. Him and another guy go in on Mondays just to clean up paperwork and everything, so they're ready to go for Tuesday. So he put the other stapler down. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. I'm gonna just grab the picture here. Where is it here? I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. I'll try and get this nice and close. Hold on. So the one stapler is the one he got from the secretary's desk. The other one was sitting right in front of his mouse and his keyboard. He's definitely not going to miss that. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely going to be seeing where his stapler is. Yeah, he was a little freaked out, to say the least. I just laughed. I said, hey, why don't we go to the museum and look at Mandy the Haunted Doll? His quote to me was, screw that. I am never going to visit that doll. Good night, gorgeous Jules. Thank you to Kimberly, the lovely and talented Kimberly from British Columbia, for the $5 super chat. Really do appreciate that. All right. Ricardo, how you doing, man? Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time, man. Thank you for joining our chat room. Here we go, guys. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott, hanging out, chilling, talking some woo tonight from SOR headquarters, and we thank each and every one of you for joining us. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's get to it, shall we? The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the potentially violent. Okay, so last week, the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup in an abbreviated, weird NHL season. But I'm going to tell you this, America, you have a lot to learn about what we do and what we scream at the television if we're not in the arena cheering on our favorite team. Why? Well, see, in Canada, this would not trigger us at all. But if you're in Tampa, Florida, your neighbor may think you're a little trigger happy. So a Tampa resident called 911 after hearing some people screaming about shooting next door. Fortunately, when authorities arrived from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, they arrived at Devin Garnett's apartment. There were no guns, nor were there any shootings around. Nobody was dead. Nobody was wounded. Rather, they were some excited Tampa Bay Lightning fans screaming at their television as they watched Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. So Garnett and his two friends had congregated to watch the hockey game. The trio screamed for a goal in the first period, which prompted the emergency call from a concerned neighbor. The unnamed neighbor reportedly told dispatchers someone was screaming loudly, "I dare you to shoot! Shoot!" Garnett told the Tampa Bay media and the cops that they showed up at the door thinking that there were guns in his home. He's like, nope, no guns. We're just screaming for Steve Stamkos to shoot the puck. Authorities then left after talking to everybody in the apartment with a good laugh. The police completely understood, Garnett said, but they thought it was serious because I was screaming, shoot, as in shoot the puck. Yeah, the Lightning went on to win their second Stanley Cup in franchise history. By the way, my Canucks, 50 years, still no Stanley Cup. I don't know if I ever want them to win now, God, the way we riot when we lose in a Stanley Cup final, I could just imagine how torn down Vancouver would get if they actually did win. A London man putting on some old clothes and throwing them into the donation bin called firefighters to rescue a cat that turned out to be a battery-operated toy. Ellen McElliott, an associate professor for the University of Roehampton in London, tweeted photos showing the scene that unfolded after he put some items into the bin and heard a meow. Police and firefighters responded to the scene and agreed that there seemed to be sounds of a trapped cat, possibly two cats, inside the container. One of the police officers suggested we drop food in there in case the cats had been there for a few days and were hungry. He says, so I went to Sainsbury and I had my car nearby and we went and bought some cat food. The fire brigade eventually turned up and used their heavy tools to open the bin. Once it was open, there was no sign of a cat. Nope. Firefighters looked around and found some pieces of clothing moving around, and they picked up one of them battery-operated toy cats. Yeah, the battery-operated stuffed toy, a fur-real friend's cat, made a very convincing meow, McElliott said. It was activated by touch, so after I dropped an old pair of shoes, it activated and started making noises. McElliott said the firefighters and police officers all had a good laugh at the outcome, which turned out to be the best of the worlds. The 2 community officers, 3 police officers, and 2 firefighters started laughing. I went red-faced and apologized. We all then left as quickly as possible. Have you guys seen how bright that Mars has been lately? I mean, I went out and looked at the stars last night. We had Jupiter, Saturn in a straight line. Then you got Mars coming up. And Mars has been huge lately. Huge! I love it. It is gorgeous. Well, it's because Mars is heading closer to Earth. Yes, the red planet will come the closest to Earth that it will ever be until 2035, NASA has reported, but that distance is still rather relative, as the planets will still be a whopping 38.6 million miles away from each other. Known as the Mars Close Approach, this event happens every couple years and follows Mars and Earth, which are normally at least 33.9 million miles away. As they come closer to and farther away from each other in their elliptical orbits and around the Sun, according to the Space Agency, when Mars, Earth, and the Sun become aligned, the red planet will be visible for much of the night in the southern sky and is at its highest point at about midnight. Mars will also appear very bright in the Earth's sky, according to NASA. Look at what we've seen so far, making it easier to see with telescopes or the naked eye and providing exceptional viewing that only comes around once every 15 to 17 years. Simply go outside, look up, and depending on your local weather and lighting conditions, you should be able to see Mars. Mars is at its brightest, so go out and take a look. It's gorgeous, honestly. You know what? If you get an opportunity, even just go out and stare at the stars for a little bit. You know, it's so relaxing. It's something that I try and do, and I can't say enough. It is just beautiful to watch. Count some satellites while you're there, too. The final possible legal challenge to Led Zeppelin's ownership of Stairway to Heaven has been defeated. The band was sued for copyright in 2014 over claims that they had stolen the song's opening riff from Taurus by a U.S. band called Spirit. Led Zeppelin won the case in 2016, but it was revived on appeal in 2018. A court of appeals upheld the original verdict earlier this year. Now the U.S. Supreme Court has declined to hear the case, definitively ending it. Stairway to Heaven regularly appears on lists of the greatest rock songs ever written, and this case has been one of music industry's most closely watched disputes. Millions of dollars were potentially at stake, with the song estimated to have earned around $3.4 million in a 5-year period that was at issue during the trial. The copyright dispute was originally lodged by journalist Michael Skidmore in 2014 on behalf of the estate of Randy Wolf, the late frontman of Spirit. Lawyers for Wolf's estate argued that Led Zeppelin became familiar with Spirit's song after the two bands played on the same bill at a club in Birmingham in 1970, a year before Stairway to Heaven was released. In the original trial, Spirit's bassist Mark Andes testified that he met Led Zeppelin singer Robert Plant at the show and played snooker with him afterwards. Plant insisted he had no memory of the night, partially attributing his lack of memory to a bad car crash on his way home. Both he and his wife suffered head injuries in the accident, he told the court, after the windscreen of his Jaguar was left buried in his face. Guitarist Jimmy Page testified that he had been unaware of Spirit's song until people started posting online comparisons in the early 2010s. I knew I had never heard that before, he said. It was totally alien to me. The jury rejected Page and Plant's argument that they would have not been familiar with Taurus, saying that they had access to it. However, they found evidence from musicologists more convincing. Experts who testified said that the descending musical pattern shared by both songs has been a common musical device for centuries. One example cited Chim Chim Cheree from the 1964 Disney musical Mary Poppins. The jury, which concluded the two songs were not intrinsically similar, were not allowed to listen to Taurus during the trial. This and other alleged errors led to an appeal. But in March, the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco upheld the original verdict, saying the errors did not warrant a new trial. John McAfee, the antivirus software magnate and former Libertarian presidential candidate, has been indicted for tax evasion. McAfee allegedly failed to file his taxes for 4 years despite earning millions in income between 2014 and 2018 for promoting cryptocurrencies, consulting work, speaking engagements, and selling the rights to his life story for a documentary. The indictment alleges that McAfee evaded taxes by having his income paid into bank accounts and cryptocurrency accounts in the name of others, while also using the names of others to conceal ownership of property and assets, including a yacht. The amount McAfee owes was not specified in the indictment. The June 15, 2020 indictment was unsealed following McAfee's arrest in Spain, where he is pending extradition, prosecutors said. According to an attachment to the indictment, if convicted, McAfee faces a maximum of 5 years in prison on each count of tax evasion and a maximum of 1 year for each count of willful failure to file a tax return. McAfee also faces a period of supervised release, restitution, and over $350,000 in monetary penalties, according to the indictment. Ah, poor John. Poor John. Yeah. A rare 102-carat white diamond has been sold at auction for $15.7 million in what experts say is a bargain. The gemstone went to an unnamed telephone bidder. The auction was held online by Sotheby's in Hong Kong due to the pandemic. The diamond was taken from a 271-carat stone, which was discovered at a Canadian mine in 2018. Only 7 other diamonds larger than 100 carats and of the same quality have gone under the hammer. The stone did not have a reserve price, a minimum price that the seller is willing to accept for an item. It is the first time in history that a diamond is sold at auction this way. Sotheby's described the diamond as flawless and said it was difficult to overstate its rarity and beauty. Tobias Cormand, managing director of the online jeweler 77 Diamonds, said the buyer had bagged a bargain. He said that by not having a reserve price, the seller made a brave decision that has come back to bite him. In 2017, a necklace featuring a 163-carat diamond fetched $33.7 million at a Christie's event in Geneva. The diamond, taken from a 404-carat stone in Angola, is said to be the largest diamond ever presented at auction. The buyer's identity was not revealed. The same year, a rare pink diamond weighing just under 19 carats fetched 50.3 million Swiss francs at an auction, a record price per carat. The price at around 2.6 million per carat marked a world record for a pink diamond, according to the Europe head of auctions house at Christie's. That is just crazy. Crazy. Moving on. All right. You know I have a fear of sharks, and this one, it still scares me, but it's kind of cute. The first ever albino shark was captured off the coast of Britain near the Isle of Wight, British reports have said. Jason Gillespie was deep-sea fishing in the area when he spotted the remarkable 3-foot taupe shark. I've been fishing for 30 years, and I've never seen one like that, said Gillespie. It's the fish of a lifetime, 1 in a million. The taupe shark, or school shark, has a condition called leucism that results in a loss of pigmentation. Leucism occurs when some or all pigment cells fail to develop during differentiation. So part of all of the animal's body surface lacks cells capable of making pigment. Gillespie explained that he had heard of all-white sharks before, but he had never seen one in person. I heard one person from Wales who caught one years ago, but it was much smaller, about 6 pounds. I think generally, if they lose their color, they struggle to survive because they don't have the same camouflage, and they can't hunt as effectively, and they get picked up by predators. With taupe, they are a protected species, so we unhook them in the water, but the minute we saw this one, I shouted to my mate, grab the net. I knew I needed to get some photos of it, so we pulled her on board, took pictures, and then immediately got her back. After taking photographs of the shark for what he said was less than a minute, they eventually got the shark back in the ocean. According to marinebio.org, taupe sharks, which were first discovered in 1758, are harmless to humans, often found near continental shelves. They are widely distributed on the planet and found in areas such as the western and eastern Atlantic, southern Baja California, and the Gulf of California in Mexico, and more. Taupe sharks can live up to 55 years and are hunted for a variety of reasons, including their meat, liver, oil, and fins. They are listed on the critically endangered species list. Well, good for that one. All right. Firefighters responded to a road in Germany. Why? They had to rescue a rat that was so fat it became stuck in a narrow hole in a manhole cover. Yes, firefighters were summoned to the Stubenster area of Germany when the rat was spotted stuck in a manhole cover in the middle of the road. The department said a firefighter attempted to grab the rat and wiggle the creature free, but the rat bit at the firefighter's glove, injuring its mouth. The firefighter, though, was not hurt. The crew ended up removing the manhole cover to push the rat out from the bottom. The rat was taken to a veterinary clinic where it received food and treatment for its mouth injury. All right, moving on. I like blueberries. I really like blueberries. And I got to be honest with you. If I saw this one, I would eat it. An Australian couple were awarded a Guinness World Record for growing the world's heaviest blueberry, which weighs in at more than half an ounce. Guinness confirmed the blueberry grown by David and Lisa Mazardis, founders and owners of Nature's Select breeding program in Wilbinga, set a new world record for the blueberry at 0.57 ounces. The berry has a diameter of 1.4 inches. The Mazardis said that they did not set out to grow unusually large blueberries, but the size of the fruit is a side effect of breeding the Oz Blue variety of blueberries for traits related to taste and texture. I don't care. I just want that sucker in my mouth. I want to chomp down on it because I love blueberries. It's my favorite fruit, and I want to try it. I don't care. It's going to go rotten anyways, so I might as well eat it. Unless they've already eaten it already, then that would kind of suck. But I'm going to be honest, that blueberry looks absolutely awesome. And finally tonight, an Italian man who once held the Guinness World Record for the most ice cream scoops balanced on a cone recaptured his record on a TV special. Why are we going to television with this? Honestly. And what a waste of ice cream. Guinness said Dimitri Panisiera originally captured the record in 2013 when he balanced 85 scoops of ice cream on a single cone. The record was captured by Ashrita Furman, who upped the ante with 123 scoops. Pansiera recaptured it, though. He wasn't going to be outdone. He's like, I could put 2 more scoops on. All right, so he did so. And Guinness clapped. People clapped. And they all ate ice cream afterwards. It was served by the spoonful to the special studios audience. Who cares? Who cares? You know, it didn't even look like appetizing ice cream. I'll be honest with you. I'm an ice cream fan. But that looked gross. Looked absolutely gross. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air. Why? Because we love the audience participation on here. So if you want to find the audience, the Thought of the Dave, go on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio or my personal Facebook page. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. How do you deal with cranky people? Why do I ask this? I had some cranky people in my office earlier today. Cranky people. Their snark and sarcasm wasn't even good. I actually told them don't even bother. It's not healthy snark and sarcasm. You can't be that way. It's terrible. They didn't like that. They started to raise their voice. And I just went, not in Dave's office. Take that elsewhere. Nope. Calm down the situation. Blood was boiling there for a little bit. But anyways, I wanted to ask you all of this because I was kind of grumpy about this. Let's go to our favorite veteran, Marty. We love you, Marty, and every veteran who listens to this show. He says, I mostly ignore them as best I can. Then he posts a clown for me. Kind of weird looking. Spookles the cat. She goes, I reply to cranky people with grumpy cat. Go figure. Oscar likes to kill him with kindness. Shanna says, when it's Monday, suck it up until I get some relief. Then she posts a gif of somebody literally grabbing a cork in a bottle of wine with her teeth and then just starts guzzling. Ian, pacify them by making them listen to the calming voice of Dave on SOR. That's romantic, actually. Lone Wolf, not the best option, but kick him in the nards. Jules, mostly, and I know this will be a shocking surprise, I giggle. Of course you do. Krista, depends. Am I at work, or is this on my free time? Kira, simply reply, I am sorry you are having a bad day, but please don't give it to me. Or walk away. Maria, I don't anymore. If I can walk away and keep my sanity, I'll do it. Bobby Squared, make fun of them. Trigger them until they explode. I like that one. Carrie, compassion or avoid. Greg, I just turned the crank off. Steve, give them something cold to drink. It brings down the body temperatures and the anger will subside. Tim, he's using pointy sticks. Little Marky Spender, I don't call you Dave. Thanks, buddy. Ozzy Rob, give him a Snickers bar. Little Richie G, probably with the final word tonight. I would say, hey, Dave, we need to talk. Oh, thanks, Rich. Thanks for being that shoulder for me. Hey, we'll do the Thought of the Dave on Facebook and Twitter again tomorrow. And we say thank you to Captain Shirk for having us. A one heck of a good newscast, which can be found on our website at spacedoutradio.com. And to Malcolm Robinson for being just a phenomenal guest with UFO and ghost stories out of the UK. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone participating in our chat rooms on Spreaker, YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and our website, and all the snarkers and snarkats hanging out at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. The Woo train has docked for the night, but tomorrow, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night.